Okay, everything should be working properly this time. I don't know why, but whenever I go live, if I don't have the settings exactly right, it doesn't show me the exact same thing here as it does in other places. But, question. Once again, do in order to be loving to someone, do you have to agree with everything that they believe and everything that they do in order to prove that you're loving to them? Or is it possible to be in complete disagreement with someone and what they're doing and still be loving to them? Is those two separate things a thing, I guess you could say. Let's jump right into that with Thought Raid and do it properly this time. Well, welcome back to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, and with me today is Tim, and today is a topic that I'm going to be taking some time to unpack a little bit because I did not realize how confusing this question could be. So bear with me. I'm going to hopefully I can make it very understandable what's going on inside my head. So the topic. So essentially, there's been something that's been really big on my mind that I feel like there are people out there that I know who are kind of afraid to be in disagreement with somebody about things that they believe or feel because they feel like in doing so that would not be loving to them, that they need to accept what the person believes about themselves, what they do, what they feel as this is correct for them. And therefore, in order for me to love them, I need to accept that and have zero disagreement with that and just let them be. And that's it. And I don't know, that's something that I'm personally like working through and figuring out balance of, but I kind of stand on the belief that it is possible to be in disagreement with someone and to let them know about your disagreement, but also to be loving at the same time, and that the disagreement with their decisions, with what they do, is still loving towards them because you're recognizing that they themselves are dynamic. They've got good things that they're doing and believe that are healthy and building up their lives, but there's also things that exist in all of us that they're doing that's unhealthy, and that's people are not just one thing. They're not just all good or all bad. And I don't know, that's just something that's been on my mind recently, and I wanted to kind of dive into that and to dig into it. Does that make any sense? Like, I'm still working on, like, hoping that this is something that makes sense. Does that make sense at all?
Kinda. It makes me think about our recent conversation about the vaccine and how you and I have differing opinions on it. I was with some friends downtown last night. And we talked about a myriad of things, everything from vaccinations to prenuptial agreements.
Yeah.
And we disagreed on a lot of stuff. But I think it is kind of interesting how when you navigate things with friends, like I've seen people in the past that have really solid friendships and relationships come to this one trespass, this one situation where they disagree. And all of a sudden, their relationship just goes kaput, you know? And they say, oh, I didn't know that about you. You must not be the person that I thought you were, you know? And that's really confusing to me.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And I feel like as I've gotten older, I've been learning how to continue to remain friends with people and to love them and not just drop them entirely because they have a separate belief than I do. And
Did you
that's
used to do that?
uh, to more severe degrees than I do now. Like nowadays, the type of friends that I have are much more varied than they were when I was younger. Because I've also become more confident in myself and who I am in Christ specifically. And so their beliefs do not threaten me, even though that they're different, even though that I can see that there's probably harm. I've also become more confident in my own perceptions about what's going on. which I used to be a whole lot more not sure and very more second guessing about myself. And even to this day, I still have a lot of room to grow. I still second guess things about my own life. I still second guess my perceptions on things. But I've become more comfortable with allowing for differences. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I want to talk about, because it just I've seen in the church, um one of the things that I've noticed, and this is not everywhere, and I'm very fortunate. I have some really good churches in my life, but I've seen in pockets of the church people who kind of fall into this all or nothing category, where if they, and I've seen it in both, and I've seen it on an aggressive end and a passive end. So on the aggressive end, like we've talked about often about our stances on homosexuality and stuff of this nature, and thinking about that is what made me want to talk about this in the first place. But in one camp, I've seen Christians who are just downright nasty towards people who struggle with same-sex attraction and have had that in their life, and they just call gay people names, and are just rude. And so there's that camp where it comes out in a negative way, and they have no space, it seems, at least from the outside. I can't tell what's on their heart because I'm not Jesus, but from the outside, their actions suggest that they don't have much space to understand that homosexual people are not the enemy, and they're not terrible people, and we shouldn't be just treating them like we're treating them. But, and this is the part that I've seen more of where I live, I've also seen Christians who don't challenge people in homosexuality at all, and just go against what they've believed in the Bible, and just completely embrace the beliefs of the world as this is right and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it at all, and we just need to be loving to them. And I've seen that, and that's also bothered me. And so today, what I want to posit is that there's a balance of, you can absolutely love someone, and truly, no matter what, you're going to be there for them, and your relationship with them is not hinging upon how well they're doing, and your love especially is not hinged upon how well they're doing. But at the same time, if they're doing things that are detrimental to themselves and hurtful towards others, you also can stand up and say, that's not okay, and I'm going to tell you because I love you. And it's not a hate-based thing, but rather it's a love-based and concern-based thing. And I guess I just want to talk about and navigate how to do that so that we can live in both grace and truth. Does that make sense?
I got a lot of stuff that's coming to mind, but I think one of the primary things would be assuming somebody's motive, you know? Because whenever I've been in situations like this where I'm tempted to isolate's the wrong word, to, what is that word? Not pigeonhole. What am I thinking of? Put somebody in a box is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Stereotype?
Stereotype?
That's one way of putting it. No, not exact, but it's
No, there's a specific type of, there's a specific phrase I'm looking for. Pigeonhole? No, it's not. It's not a pigeonhole.
Anyways, you're putting them in a box, you're limiting their potential down to this one area.
Yeah, it's just simplifying and generalizing people.
Generalizing, maybe that's it.
Yeah, I go through all this range of emotions and assumptions in my head for why they are doing as they do. Like last night, we, as I mentioned, we were downtown with some friends, and we got on the topic of prenuptial agreements, and me and one of my friends completely disagreed. And through the course of the conversation, they made the comment, it's not really fair to presume that I'm a bad person just because I want a prenuptial agreement. Right, which after listening to him, I completely agree with, and that's not what I was doing. I just had my own perspective about it. But I think when you enter into a space where you disagree with somebody and you don't stop and ask them why, because their why is so much more important than their how. Like the behavior and the circumstances has nothing. Well, I don't want to say it has nothing to do, but it has little less to do with who they are than why they're doing. Like, well, why are they responding this way? Why do they believe this way? Let's talk about that instead of the circumstance of what they're actually doing.
Yeah, I think that's an important first step when it comes to navigating that of loving someone, but then potentially you disagree with them. Because before you even
Hmm.
get to that place, I feel like it's important that if you can, to try to figure out why they're doing as they're doing, because they might have very legitimate reasons as to why. Um, and at the same time, they also may have reasons that are not great reasons, but you won't even know that if you don't ask. And if I think that's a very important first step, because I think it's a lot easier to jump to accusations before getting the full picture. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think the scriptures are very. I don't remember what I don't remember specifically is if I think it was Jesus that was talking about this, because I think he was talking about everything being confirmed between two or three witnesses. I
Hmm.
and like how sometimes there's going to be things that sound really good until there's a second person that talk about it, and then it's like you see the other side of the spectrum. It's like, oh well, wait a minute, I don't know what to believe in this situation, and that might have also been conferred specifically from Proverbs. But like that's a big thing. And excuse me if my
Hmm.
lights are flickering right now. My light is being dumb. Anyways, um, I feel like there's a lot of things people just jump immediately to the judgment before they get the second opinion or the second
Hmm.
perspective. Like, yes, that would maybe referring to you're in a court of law and you're trying to figure out what the justice is, and there's two people a part of it. But in the case of you just interacting with a person on a day-to-day basis and your problem is specifically with them and no one else, then you definitely, that's the other side of the spectrum. So you've got your first witness, which is your own perceptions, but they're the second witness, and you have to take the time to figure out, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? Like this is no good. Like what this is affecting me, but I don't know why you're doing it, and maybe my perceptions are off. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I think that's a very important first step.
Well, man, that relates a lot to how people view God from the position of you're an you just must hate me, God. Like, why would you put all these statutes and rules and regulations in the Bible? You're just like a heavy-handed, selfish God. Why would you say I can't do that? What the heck? I want to do this. You're taking away my freedoms, whatever. But there's a big difference between saying, because you said this, you must not love me, and saying, well, I'm just going to assume that you love me and we're miscommunicating. So what am I missing or what are you missing? Well, I mean, first of all, God doesn't miss anything, but
Right.
most of the time I'm missing something, and it's me having to say, hey, God, I'm trying to be humble right now. I don't really get why you're saying you're doing this thing. And homosexuality is one of those things, because like when people say love is love, to a degree that makes sense. Loving somebody makes sense. It's like, so what if it's man and man or woman and woman or transgender, whatever the case is. But biblically, there are a few references in a few different places where it says that it's not healthy, and God doesn't view it as something's healthy.
Yeah.
And that's up for debate too among Christian circles, and not even Christian circles, but people that are striving to understand who don't know God's heart. Because
Yeah.
when you see the law and the expectation, but you don't know the heart first, it's really tough to reconcile. Well, this is conflicting with how I feel, and especially when it's something as intimate as having intimacy and love with somebody. It's like, if this entity says that this is not healthy, then that entity must not have my best interest at heart, right? And so that in and of itself prevents people from going the mile to say, okay, well, God, what is your heart? Because from the forefront, it's so somebody asked me the other day, why should somebody believe that homosexuality is wrong if they don't believe in God? And that's a tough thing to answer. I mean, you could position any number of things. Like, and Brandon, you've talked to me about some of them, and
Yep.
honestly, a lot of them are subjective to how people want to receive that. You know, but it's just one of those things where it's like you got to teach people to engage in the relationship first and the circumstances second. And that's what this whole topic is about.
Yeah.
It's not making the circumstance bigger than the relationship with the person and the communication and the why.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want their either they don't see what you're having what you say to be true, or they just downright disagree with it. They don't like it at all. Any of that stuff to come between their value to you. Like
Mhm.
I have to stress this because it's important for me. People are dynamic. Again, like I mentioned this in the beginning, but I need to mention it again. And this is something that I've miscommunicated with you, Tim. There's been moments where I've said I don't trust you, but like I don't. When I say that, I'm not. I have something much more specific in mind that I've known, but like it's not. I don't trust you in general. It's there's one thing or two things that you've done that I have or have not trusted over the times that we've worked through over time. Um, and I've had this, but I've not been able to verbalize it properly until recently. And now, as I'm starting to understand what I've been thinking this whole time, um, I feel like this is important to state. Like people are just they're gray. There's good in them, absolutely, and their intrinsic value, created by God, made in His image, never changes. Like
Mhm.
forever until the day that they die, and even beyond their death as their spirit lives on, they're still created by God and made in His image. And God, being omnipresent, exists within all things, so they are a part of God, and to hate them is to hate God. And you should never, ever hate and allow for a space for hate in your heart for anyone, even those who absolutely treat you like trash and want you to die. Like, even them, they are still made in the image of God and are worthy of being respected as His creation. And so that should always be seen when you encounter things that they do that is either something you don't understand or is not healthy for them or you don't like or whatever. Um and so once you have that established and you recognize that they're very important just simply by existing, then you can begin to navigate into the parts of them that is not healthy. And maybe you're right about it, maybe you're wrong about it, but that's where you take the first step of getting to know them and asking them questions on why they believe what they believe. Because as you
Mhm.
ask questions, then you're able to get deeper into the issue, if it is an issue, and you have a better understanding of areas you can help based off of the education you've received and the things you've experienced over the course of your life than trying to immediately do that without asking those questions first.
So one of our supporters, Austin Jaffe, I met him at the fair, and I was talking to him for a bit, and they are actually fostering a child,
Oh,
which is really cool. And it's just a really interesting process. He was talking about, and I don't want to get too much into the specifics just
sure.
for respect for their situation, but they received a child that into their home to give the true foster parents a break, and the foster parents were like, "We don't want them back."
Oh, geez.
And I don't know how old the child is, but apparently, as I was talking to Austin, he was telling me that as kids get older, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, it gets harder and harder to foster them. And that what you just said, people are gray. This is relevant because basically what that means is people have a story, people have If you think about a home, if you buy a used house, you have to have it inspected. You don't know if are there cracks in the foundation. Is there an issue with mosquitoes? How old is the house? Have there ever been mold problems? These are all things you think about because we've been redoing our basement, and I'm finding lots of stuff that I need to fix. And so relating this back to the whole fostering people and people are gray. Most parents want a kid that is a clean slate.
Mm,
People want relationships that are a clean slate. People want Christians. People want new Christians that are clean slates, and nobody's a clean slate. I think Chase Hicks put it really well when he said that part of the detriment to Christian society is our unwillingness to walk with people through things. And so when we engage with somebody, it's really easy to just generalize and lay a blanket over whatever sin we think that they have that needs to be righted in a specific way.
right.
And yet we're not willing to actually get in the mud with them and say, okay, well, why do you believe this way? And have some empathy for what they're going through. Because much like homosexual people, most of the time can't help certain feelings that they have. Angry people can't help just feeling naturally what they feel.
Right.
The scriptures even say we have to take every thought captive. We have to take
Yeah.
action. We have to be intentional with that.
Yeah.
But getting in there and saying, okay, well, I acknowledge that you feel this way. And that's tough because a lot of times the way we feel and what's sanctified, basically what's healthy, is mutually exclusive. Well, first of all, why would we want to go there? Second of all, what's preventing you from going there? Third of all, how do you feel about that? Like, where are you on the timeline? And being okay with people's time, because if it takes somebody, I don't know, 50 years to quit an addiction to pornography, is that still a success? If it takes 2 days, is it a success? Which is more of a success? Somebody could quit pornography, reset the counter, by the way.
Yeah.
Somebody could quit pornography in 2 days, but it might be a behavior change instead of a heart change. And so for the next 17 years, they're sitting here fighting these temptations, just like forcing themselves to do it instead of allowing God to have a heart change. But somebody that's taken 50 years might have a heart change and don't. And, Dylan actually joined me today and talked about how God helped him have a heart change out of pornography, which is really cool. But just having grace for somebody's process and not trying to fit it into our box of expectation and time. I think that's what I believe you mean, or my assumption of what you mean when you say that people are gray. Am I picking that up correctly?
Well, yeah. I mean, when I'm saying people are gray, I'm just trying to bring out because I feel like there's a lot of people that I see that seem to like believe that people like, for instance, I'll tell you, here's a good example of this. And this ebbs and flows in American culture, but presently what's popular or was recently popular is critical race theory and the belief that just white people are inherently racist, and we have built a structure around that enables our racistness, whatever, and that we will never truly be able to not understand, like to unlearn this superior belief system. And like that just grossly coats any person of Germanic, English, Norse, Irish, whatever, descent, and just you're just all racist people. And it's just like that's we're not, yes, the name is white, but we're not all black and white. Like we're like life is so much more gray than that, and a person is so much more gray than that. Like, are there things as a white person that I may not understand or know that could be looked upon as racist? Sure. Yes, there are things that I can do, but am I just, you can solidify in my character I'm a bona fide racist? No, I'm not. I've never, like, I've grown up, I feel very blessed to have grown up at a church that was very interracial and very comfortable around people of other racists, other races. Excuse me.
The truth comes out, ladies and
Oh no!
gentlemen. A church with other racists, she
No, I'm
says.
very come from church to other races. And you can see that in evidence here with Thought Raid. We've had people from different races all the time on Thought Raid, different ages, groups and stuff. Um, but yeah, no, I feel very blessed that I have had a good start, like good parents that are, very accepting of other people, and churches that are of that don't look like them. Um, so I'm not just all one thing, and neither is any individual person. And that's really important when it comes to addressing someone in love when there's a disagreement. Once you've taken the time to see if what they're believing is truly healthy or not for yourself
Hmm.
by asking the right questions and stuff. Um, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at is like you got to take the steps to kind of figure out who this person is and why they're saying as they're saying before you can make that judgment call. But once you've done that, then I'm losing my thoughts. Crap.
It's okay. Well, I'll pick up since you're
Thank
throwing
you.
down.
Thank you.
Um, I I think it's really important because actually, before I go there, let me say this. I think it's impossible to convict anybody of anything.
Right.
I think it's impossible to change anybody's mind and force them to believe something. And I think it's just we try to do that so much because and maybe I'm speaking from my position. In the past, when I've tried to change somebody's mind, it was always for my benefit. Even if it didn't seem like it was for my benefit, it was for my benefit because we want to believe that we're right. We want to believe that we've got it figured out, and nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody likes being proven wrong. So if we get other people to believe as we believe, it reinforces our confidence that, hey, I've got it figured out. I don't need to change, you know? But in our culture, having a belief system, thoughts, whatever, where we navigate them through with humility and saying, "Hey, I might not have this all figured out." That really threatens our identity, or what a lot of us believe is our identity. I mean, look at social media, man. Like we get so much identity from being right and having a position that other people agree with. I mean, when was the last time you posted something on social media and people were like, no, I hate this. This is wrong. I mean, think about politics, man. The vaccinations. Did it make you feel good when people differed in opinion from you?
No, I
And
mean, typically it does make me feel a little bit like, oh no, like what's going to happen to me, essentially.
yeah, and when that happens, we get that knee jerk response of wanting to present more information to kind of sway you, saying, well, this is common sense. If you have this information, you'll believe as I believe, right? But even Jesus didn't do that. When Jesus came, he presented things from I guess a stance of invitation. I mean, Matt Peterson says that all the time. Jesus operates in invitation. So what if we changed our thought process from I'm going to convince you that this is sinful, I'm going to convince you that this is bad, and instead say, well, here's my perspective. What do you think of that? Okay, well, if you disagree, why do you disagree? And if people aren't willing to come to our side, well, yeah, that's okay. It might not be the right time because anytime that you put the circumstance in being right over the other person, you've already lost.
Yeah. And I think that the only thing that I want to add to that is just a matter of like not being afraid to talk about the things that you believe just because you're concerned about letting those beliefs out and potentially being wrong. Because I feel like a part of love is risk for the other person and also for your your reputation being on the line. Because I feel like if you're wrong, then you have
Mhm.
an opportunity to grow and to learn, and then you can come out stronger, and the relationship can become tighter because you are putting yourself out there with the potentiality of being wrong. But if you're
Mhm.
right, and if the person happens to be open to listening to what you have to say, then again, the relationship has the opportunity to become tighter for that because you took the risk to tell them something they may not like to hear, but they were willing to hear at the time. and you said it and you didn't let it pass, and you don't have to sit with regret on your mind that, like, I saw them doing something that was unhealthy, but I was afraid if I tell them they would hate me, and therefore I
Hmm.
never spoke up. And I think that's what I'm like trying to like bring out, because I ironically, even though with how confrontational I can be, stand more on the side point of being afraid of being rejected by speaking about my beliefs and what I think about something than I do on, well, just whatever will be will be. I'm much more conscientious than I let off. I've just kind of learned to push past that multiple times, and I think I've definitely gotten into places where I begin striving a lot too.
Hmm.
Where it's like, okay, I've taken the time to take this risk and let you know what I believe, and you don't believe it, but I'm gonna keep going at it.
Yeah, when I mentioned that we were downtown last night talking with some friends, and we talked about a prenup.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this one friend just blatantly, outright disagreed with one another at the forefront of the conversation. You know, this was before we went through our beliefs about it, and things got a little heated, to say the least. They got a little heated, and about three-quarters of the way through the conversation, he stops, looks over at me, and he says, "I really appreciate you for saying this. But I know that since this is getting as heated as it is, it just means that you care, you know." And that's the sign of a healthy relationship. That's a healthy friend, first of all, who can stop mid conversation where you're disagreeing and say, "Hey, thank you for this conflict. I know you're doing it because you love me." Because stuff like that's not comfortable, you know? Taking the time to enter into a place of conflict and disagreement just for the sake of, well, here's what I believe. I think you might be wrong, and I want to position this just for you to think about and chew on. People really feel respected by that, you
Yeah.
know. But I think where it breaks down is where there is a need for them to believe you or for them to come on your side. You know, when you lay it at their feet and say, "Hey, here you go. Also, what do you think?" Because there is that chance that I'm wrong too, even though I feel strongly about this. You know, that really shows somebody that you respect them when you stop and listen when you think that you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I like that a lot, because that's the risk. The risk of, putting it out there and being wrong and going through that argument you just talked about. It's like, like you could potentially be wrong and also lose that person as a friend. Um because there's no good relationship is going to be had without taking risks, because it's in those risk taking that the person will be able to see you for who you really are, and vice versa. And you'll be able to work through the things that are important to you and decide how important are they really in light of this friendship. um and so having that's the risk you take, and it could be that person just gone. That is the straw that breaks their back and they're done. But you won't know that if you don't take that risk. And so that's what I want to do in encouraging people who are watching today. Like like don't be afraid to talk about things you disagree with, because they may not like it, and they may bring things that you don't know how to respond to, and you may find that you're wrong. Like, don't just avoid confrontation and risk taking with the person, because if you make a habit of that, then you'll only have friends that are there for you because you agree with them, while you're constantly betraying what you know and believe on the inside. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to bring up, because I'm guilty of that. I have definitely had many times where I didn't speak up because I was more so wanting to keep the relationship than I was to speak what I was seeing at that time, and therefore the relationship stagnated because they didn't really know what I truly believed, and therefore there was tension, and then things eventually fell apart. And so I just want people to know about that, so that way if you see yourself doing the same thing, that you can see it and find a better way of thinking about it and going about it. Thought raid. So that way, you can go deeper into relationships with people, and also maybe cut out relationships that are just not healthy in the first place, that you'll find as you begin to share about what you truly believe. And
Hmm.
and then here's the tools, asking questions and stuff. That's a way to make it easy to kind of step into it, is you go in with asking questions, getting to understand what they believe, instead of making immediate judgments on it based on one thing that they say, which does not account for the entirety of who they are.
Thinking about this, Brandon, like I'm just thinking while you've been talking, I just have this mental picture of two friends who have been friends their entire lives who disagree about something like, I don't know, sports teams or something like that, or even something more foundational. Um, and it's really easy to get in that mode of thought and thinking, okay, well, conflict is good. It's okay to believe differently. It's really easy to go from there into universalism where your truth is your truth,
Mm,
right? Where it's, well, because you believe that way and you have a good case and your convictions don't say otherwise, that's true for you. I think something that you need to remember also is that everything is not just true for one person. There's a truth that is like an undercurrent, just like laws, like the law of gravity. Just because somebody doesn't believe in gravity or somebody believes, hey, I identify as a car, they're not a car. Gravity still is going to exist. And I think I do want to encourage people not just to be willing to disagree and just allow people to have different thought processes, but to not venture into that space where just because you believe it, it's true, because that's also super dangerous.
right.
Because yeah, I think I just want to leave it at that, and
No, I'm
if you
glad
want
that
to
you
build
bring
on
that
that
up.
too.
No, I'm glad that you bring that up a lot, because that was the place that was I was noticing most in the church, that I found to be more deadly, is the church sliding towards a little bit of universalism more now than it was in the past. And I know I've heard stories of other churches that are like very rigid, but I feel like if we begin to try to cover up truth entirely and pretend that it doesn't exist and that everyone's truth is true, then that just creates a whole lot of too much ambiguity that leads to hurt and suffering. Um, because if the reality of everyone's truth is true, then the person who believes that no one's truth is true is just as valid as the person's that everyone's truth is true, and therefore it cancels itself out, because
Yeah,
everyone's going to believe something. And so if that reality truly existed, there would be no structure for which the universe exists, but there is structure. And like you mentioned, I can disbelieve that gravity exists, and then I can, and then taking that a step further, I could jump off a building, but gravity is still going to pull me down towards the center mass of the planet. And I'm going to get hurt or die. So it's just like it's and I can sit in a garage all my life and claim that I'm a car, but I'm not going to just suddenly develop wheels and an engine and everything and function. And you could probably, if you wanted to, rip out organs of my body and put in mechanical things, but then I would die. Like I can't make myself a car because I sit in a garage. You
yeah.
know?
Well, let me speak on a sanctification real quick, because I think this is a really big hang up for a lot of people. So thinking about universalism, I think universalism really prevents people from walking in humility, because universalism is basically saying I'm the God of my own world and I get to decide what's right from wrong.
Yeah.
And when let's say you and I, Brandon, had strong disagreements about something, and I didn't engage you from the position of, well, your truth is your truth. Every time we got together, it's like you knew that I disagreed with this, and I was not going to believe what you believe because, well, honestly, I think you're wrong because I think that the way that you're navigating your life is not operating in love for yourself, other people, or love for God, right? Yeah, it's not in alignment with the truth because alignment is real relationship, right? And being willing to be aligned. And so if you think about sanctification and the whole reason why we got booted out of the Garden of Eden and separated from God and all that stuff, it's because God and sin are mutually exclusive. It's like cold and hot. You never, cold does not exist. You just get less and less and less warm,
Right.
right? So if God is here and you enter into sin, well, sin separates you, right? So you're never cold, you're never fully apart from him, but you are further away because you're choosing sin over God.
Right.
Right. And where I'm going with this is whenever, okay, so let's say that I had a friend who's homosexual
Mm-hmm.
and they know my position on that, but I also respect them as a person before the concept or the discussion of homosexuality.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm around them, if they're not, if, well, first of all, if I'm not willing also, but if they're not willing to hear my side of it, through our lifetime of relationship and there's no like humility there, we're just naturally going to gravitate away from each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially if the concepts that are contrary are significant concepts tied to our identity, right? And so the same thing with God. There's a whole scripture passage that talks about God giving people up to their own debased minds. So basically, if people choose not to engage with God and be sanctified by him, he's like, well, I'm going to let you have what you're choosing,
Yeah.
And that's kind of the detriment of the whole universalism mindset. It's like, okay, well, you can believe what you believe, but it's going to cause a rift sooner or later because one of us is true.
Right.
Now, if we don't have a heart posture of humility saying, well, I'm open to being wrong, especially, guys, Christians, us too. Like, if we don't have a heart position and listen to the people that say, well, God's not real. Okay, well, why do you say that? Okay, well, what is causing you to believe differently from me? And Christians, if we're threatened by that, well, you got to examine, well, where's the humility in my relationship with God? Because that's required too. Because there's risk there. You have to risk being wrong.
Right.
And you have to risk allowing the other side to prove themselves in commitment to you, God included. So I don't know if this is all making sense or if I'm
Oh no,
rambling.
I'm loving it. I am loving it. You're bringing together the concepts that have been in my head quite well, because that's the other perspective. So the last thing that I want to talk about and then finish this is that after doing all that you can to get to understand them, as long as it's safe to do so, because I know there's some situations where it's just not safe because they're physically attacking you or something of that nature. I'm not asking you to, like, okay, go to an abusive person, physically abusive person, and try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. No, first get to safety. So I'm not saying that. But if it's not that situation, you're not physically under threat from the person. Um then, and after doing all you can to understand them and to try to explain your perspective and see what happens to all that and learn, I believe that it's also loving to set boundaries with them and say this far, no further with me, as you're describing. And it's a natural thing that occurs in general, because trying to, like, I don't think you go from loving to codependency if you continue to allow someone you don't agree with, and you've done all you can to try to understand their perspective, and you find that there are things that they're doing that's not healthy and they're not willing to change about it, it's it becomes a thing. It's no longer loving. It becomes a thing of codependency, not to put boundaries with them and say, I can't let this continue on. And then what that risks also, I find, is that then you have the risk of being resentful towards them, resentful towards others, highly irritated, and maybe also a threat of insanity, because you hold these beliefs, but you can see they're not really logical, but you keep holding on to them as well. As sooner or later, you have to, like, let go and put a boundary with them and say, I can't keep going down this path because it's just not healthy. I came to a place with one of my friends whom I was friends with for a decade, and I I was holding on to this friend so tight because they were my first real friend in a place of isolation and desert. And they came into my life at the right time, and they loved me, and we got to spend a lot of time together, and I got to help this friend a lot, and they were a great friend, and they still are a great person. But at some point, they decided to go down a path I couldn't follow, a path of universalism, where all truths are potentially true and everything. And it was a path that I couldn't go down because I know myself and my agreeableness and my ability to just drop what I believe in order to go towards the person that I love. And I knew that I had to set boundaries with them. And I got to a place where I had to recognize it was like, at this point, I was holding on to them so tight that I was becoming irritated by everything that they did and believed. And I would get angry with them, and then I would, like, we would have heated conversations where I wasn't really as kind to them as I should have been. And I had to realize I had to let go in that moment and reset and what I understood and knew about them, and to look at them as we're back to being acquaintances again. And once I was able to let go of them and to set boundaries with them, I was able to forgive them. I was able to love them. I was able to be there for them. Not to the same degree that I used to be, but definitely no longer just being irritated with them anymore. And I learned that a part of love, sometimes love lets, it's not a proverb or anything. It's a culturally circulated belief of, if you love something, let it go, and if it's yours, it'll return back to you. You know, I learned that a part of love is to let that person either go, or to, in some cases, maybe not let them go, but to put boundaries around certain things that they do, that I'm not going to engage in this area because in general the relationship is great. It's just these particular things make me go into places I don't need to be. But I've learned that is actually loving, because I'm not, in doing and putting these boundaries, I'm not diminishing them more and more and more to a place where, like, I can't have you in my life at all, nor can I even look at you as I'm disgusted by you. Like, I'm not letting myself get to that place. Instead, I'm preserving that part of me and view of them that allows me to continue to love them and to treat them like human beings, like God made infinitely valuable human beings as they are. And I know that's a big thing, so I'm gonna stop there, and I want whatever thoughts you have on that, Tim, go for it. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think something to remember as you navigate stuff with people, especially people you disagree with, is that we're not created to be right. We're created to be loving. The Holy Spirit was given to us to help us understand what it means to be right, and that's our own personal walk. You know, God spends his entire time with us while we're on this earth trying to sanctify us, getting us to a place to fulfill the position that he originally intended for us, right? No, God's the only one that's capable of doing that, you know? And so, especially if you're a Christian and you're watching this, I just want to, I want you to consider that you're not meant to be right. You're meant to be loving. You're meant to ask questions. You're meant to serve. You're meant to sacrifice, but you're also meant to uphold truth. And, you know, the scripture says that they'll know you by your fruits. So if you're walking in truth and you're walking sanctified, your life is going to show that. And if your life is not showing that, well, you're not walking in truth. You're not walking sanctified. And so it's kind of like that old adage where it says actions speak louder than words. You know, truth is going to be truth, and there's going to be the residue of that on your life if it's actually present. So you don't have to defend it per se. You just have to walk in it, and people will see it. You know, you can tell if somebody's walking in love or if they're just giving you mouth business or busy words, or there's
Service.
lip service. That's what I was trying to say.
Mouth business.
Mouth business. Yeah. focus on being loving. Don't focus on being right, but also remain true to what's true, and be willing to allow it to be tested. Because we honestly we have to be willing to do that, to show other people that, well, God's going to show Himself. He is going to show up. He is going to stand for what is right. He is going to stand for what's true. It's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, well, it's not true. It's as simple as that, and that's not your burden. Scripture also says that, and this is God speaking, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We're not meant to strong hand Ben Shapiro the world to death, so you can relax. Just relax.
Sometimes, though, I wish I had the ability to remember all the details that he remembers. That way, whenever I am trying to relay something, that I can actually do it. But, oh well. It's...
You should have been born Jewish, Brandon.
Darn.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
But anyways, that's the extent of my thoughts. Is that all that you got inside of you, Tim?
That's it.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. I just want to remind you guys that we have got a goal that we're stretching towards of $120. At that amount, we'll be able to regularly host a website, which we are in the process of getting constructed now, which I'm super excited about. And we'll be able to regularly talk about or do advertisements for ThoughtRaid, so more people can discover us and stuff. And it would also allow us to hold down our domain and everything for ThoughtRaid, so we can have that. So if you would like to, the links are in the description below, both Facebook and YouTube. If you don't want to, that is also fine as well. Just pray for us that God will continue to help us grow and everything. But either way, we're very happy that you've come to be a part of this, and we're grateful for you. So all that said, we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be live again this Monday with Get Naked Monday as we talk about what's going on in our personal lives. We'll see you there. You guys have a good night.
Yeah, I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus.